regarding shame, so I did EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, I believe. Have you heard about this? Yeah, I found that very effective, because what that did is that I found with traditional therapies or even with CBT, it required me to do a lot of homework and work all the time in having to which I'm quite a work shy person, and I didn't appreciate having to constantly have to check myself in challenging and triggering situations. And what EMDR did is it truly removed the emotion that was linked to the traumatic memory or thought process. It just sort of cut it off for me. So it took out a lot of the homework for me, where I would walk into a situation that normally would trigger me, and my emotion associated to the memory that situation is triggered is now gone.
That's good.
And so it makes it mundane. Things that I used to find terrifying are boring to me.
Brilliant.
That was helpful. I had some terrible abusive experiences in the dark as a child, and I became afraid of the dark until I was 28 years old. Couldn't sleep in the dark, couldn't be alone in a house, had to check in every cupboard, under every bed, in every single room, again and again and again. I had terrible OCD around like my safety, and I couldn't really sleep. So I was sleep deprived for like basically 28 years, which made me incredibly depressed and suicidal. So I went to this EMDR therapy just for that, because I decided to move to America, and I was like, I can't go there this afraid. I can't spend my 30s as afraid as I've spent the last 3 decades of my life. And so I did EMDR therapy, and within 2 sessions, and it's so uneventful, EMDR. It's so boring and uneventful that you feel like you're being robbed of your money.
What's happening?
Because you're just watching a light just go back and forth across the wall as if you're a fucking dog, and you just sit there for an hour doing that with a therapist sitting next to you. And
Are they talking to you about stuff?
Yeah, they're sort of saying, like, what's a traumatic memory? And I would recount the heinous things that happened to me as a child, and then they'd be like, think about that thing, which is a very painful thing to do. And you start to feel like sick in your stomach sometimes. You start to feel almost physical pain. You feel very, very stressed, and you're looking at this light, and as you are looking at it, somehow the longer you keep looking at it, it just, the feeling of pain starts to dissipate, and it never comes back. And so after I'd done 2 sessions of it, I really just thought it was bollocks. And I was like, I didn't really it hasn't changed anything. It felt very uneventful. And I went to sleep that night, and I woke up in the morning realizing that for the first time in my life, I'd turned the lights off, and I hadn't triple locked my door and checked under anything. I hadn't checked anything without realizing I'd just gone home, turned the light off, and gone to sleep. It takes your trauma from you like a thief in the night. That's the only way I could describe, in a less creepy way than a thief in the night.
A nice thief.
Yeah. Like the tooth fairy giving some money and taking some trauma.
Redundant tooth.
Yeah, exactly.
And it seemed automatic. You didn't even clock it as it was happening. You didn't go, oh my God, look, I'm just laying peacefully down in bed.
No, not at all.
This tells us, I suppose, that our consciousness and what we consider to be ourself is more diverse and expansive than we consider.
Yeah.
That through a kind of a form of hypnosis, I suppose, that could commonly be understood as, you can...
but you are very much so like awake and like in the moment. So you're not
right.
You're not in another
Trance
place in your
nothing.
mind. Yeah.
But it's somehow bypassing whatever that behavioural matrix is that makes you afraid. Because, like, in a way, it's obvious that afraid of the dark is a belief.
Yeah.
Like Jameela is afraid of the dark is a belief, and then you can somehow bypass whatever that is. Because I've had like neuro-linguistic programming, which is a sort of like, it sounds like
is
it's in the
that
same
where they
neighbourhood.
can teach you that a cigarette is a poo?
That's the whole essence of it. You see that cigarette? Yes, it's delicious.
No, but
well, my man, it's a poo.
And so when you're walking around, you can... I mean, I have no idea. I've been told this by an LLP therapist that
Well,
you're
I'm
walking around...
astonished by the
and
level
instead
of
seeing,
example.
Yeah, you see... I like
And
to
what do
live
you do
in
for a living?
Extremes.
Well, madam, I teach people that cigarettes are a poo.
Yeah.
Would you like to come to a dinner party?
But again, like with the EMDR, another way in which it helped me is that I used to weaponize food. So because of my childhood dynamic, my family dynamic, and the complicated relationships that people in many parts of my family had with food, I felt like food was rebellion, food was love, food was self-hatred. It was everything other than just fuel. It was very, very much so like emotionally, like it was sort of, Yeah, I think it was very attached to my emotions and very, very strong emotions. So anything bad would happen, I would go and comfort eat. Anything good would happen, I would go and eat until the point of discomfort where I could really only breathe if I was on all fours because my windpipe and my esophagus are no longer like making friends with each other. And again, within 2 sessions maybe of EMDR about that, I was able to just separate those emotions attached to food. And now food is just food. For the first time in my life, I had no idea how exhausting it is. That's the thing about EMDR for me, is that, and I know that that's not what we're here to talk about, but it is something that I think is very important, which is that it felt like, and you've had therapy, I don't know if you can relate to this, but it felt like walking out of a club at 4 a.m. in Camden and stepping out into the quiet street. And it's only when you're in the quiet street that you realise, fucking hell, it was so loud in there. That's how I feel about stepping out of shame and stepping out of trauma, is realising how horrific it's been inside my mind all of this time, and now I feel peaceful.
That's incredible. It makes me want to have some EMDR. It's so, like, I'm really easily influenced with stuff like that. My own therapeutic and personal development journey has been, as I am indicating through my speech, much more incremental. I've not had like many epiphanies, even though I feel like I've done all these different, like, you know, stop taking drugs, stop being a sex addict, don't watch porn anymore, like, you know, like this, like sort of all of these behaviours, let go of. And I still, when I think of, like, I have to do quite a lot of work if I'm going into a social situation not to feel anxious about it. So, you know, and I still use, and I kind of believe in, even though when I say it, it sounds a bit dumb, like the kind of psychoanalysis that is about narrativization, you know, like when you would typically see a therapist and they go, oh, you're scared of this because this happened and here's this image and that means that. And you sort of go, oh my God, I'm starting to understand it. Whereas what you're describing with EMDR is something that's much more like experiences I've had with beloved Paul McKenna, you know, like it hypnotized me.
Yeah, but it is like mainstream medical practice, like it's on the NHS now, and they hate paying for us to have any kind of help, but it's now on the NHS. You can now receive it for free.
Well, that's amazing, and I certainly don't think that it was woo-woo or new age.
No.
Quite the contrary, in fact, because it seemed like it's sort of treating the human mind like it's a type of machine, which in some ways is an analogy that I am resistant to, because I often think that that's one of the tools of objectification that's used. People are like machines; they're good machines, but like, you know, I feel that, yeah. And also I'm quite a romantic person and believe that no, we're complex, flowing,
made of
animal
gravy.
angel.
Yeah.
We're basically gravy. Right, so EMDR now, can we
it's just sort of, it doesn't necessarily for me, it doesn't make me feel like my mind is a computer. It just makes me feel like my mind has got some shelves that need reorganizing, and I've put some shit in the wrong shelf and it's throwing everything off balance.
Yeah,
it's ruining the feng shui inside my mind.
Bad mind feng shui, because it's like, it seems to me from like, and like, if you meet anyone that knows less about neurology than I do, you know, I'd like to meet them so I can talk down to them. But it seems to me that what there might be are sort of patterns of firing synapses that, you know, that we regard as our essential self, but are actually just sort of, you know, encoded. You were encoded with scared of the dark. I was encoded with not good enough, acquire status, or whatever it is. And you can, in various ways, unpick that programming, which on some level would have a mechanical component. And if it has a mechanical component, i.e. it is, you know, there are certain synapses or groups of synapses that are firing, then it's possible that it can be undone, as evidenced by your own journey, through something like EMDR or more direct forms of therapy, you know, which I've also had, you know, like forms of therapy that are like hypnotic, as opposed to someone sitting you down and talking you through and explaining to you, and you yourself, you know, discovering and uncovering aspects of yourself.
Or they just sit and nod at you like Lassie. Naddy or Lassie.
Primarily, yeah, Lassie.
Which I really don't want. I needed someone to help me.
Thanks for watching this podcast and going all the way to the end of it. Would you just kind of to click the bell, it might not be there, because over there, and subscribing, so that we can infiltrate your serenity and peace of mind with jangling bells and buzzes. Thank you.